because it's an answer to a number of very big questions. In the gap left by religion, it's an answer to the question of what should we be doing with our lives on earth. That's a good question to address. And if you say, or anyone says, I have the answer, I know what you should be doing. I know what you should be doing.
Fighting for social justice.
You should be fighting for social justice. It's a reason to get up in the morning. It's a reason to go out campaigning in the afternoon. And it's a reason to fight over the dinner table and tell your family that they're bigots. This is purpose of a kind. This is the real attraction. In fact, it's better than religion, isn't it? Because religion says if you sort these things out, then in a life to come, you will find salvation. And the social justice activists and the intersectionists and much more say, if you do all of these things, we can get justice here on earth. And who wouldn't want that if it was able to be achieved and if it was offered to you? I mean, the appeal of it is extraordinary because the world is wildly unequal, may well always be, I think probably always will be, unequal in lots of ways. It's unfair in a huge variety of ways. Our own lives all bear out that experience. We know it collectively as well as individually. And these are all things we rail against or find peace against in our lives, as the case is. But if somebody comes along and says, no, we could solve all unfairness, inequality, inequity, you've just got to join us. Ordinarily, that's said by a cult.
Sounds very Baptist to me.
It's highly Baptist. It has so many resonances from the religious tradition, which is why I say I think it's trodden into that gap.
So one of the reasons I think people are so hoodwinked, I think they're hoodwinked by language. I think they're hoodwinked by these words. Equity sounds really good. Inclusion sounds really good. Diversity sounds really good. Safe space sounds really good. All of these words sound good. And most people, they don't really know what they mean. It sounds good and it makes them feel good.
One other interesting thing about that is that I've always thought that one of the great advantages that any profession of faith or professed ideology has, strangely enough, is if it looks more complex than it is. I think a lot of people have been intellectually intimidated by the studies movements, by the grievance industry, by the intersectionalists. They feel intellectually intimidated by it because the language these people write in is far more complex than the really rather simple ideas they actually espouse. Right. There's never a word they use that they don't add syllables to unnecessarily. You know, a problem is never a problem. It is a problematization. You never have a narrative. You always have a meta-narrative. And this is the case in every single term. Everything is made to sound more complex than it is, which, by the way, as a writer, annoys me because I believe the task of writing is to try to take the most complex ideas and make them simpler, or at least simpler to understand than they might otherwise be. And here are a whole set of academics in particular who take really rather straightforward and simple assertions, which we could all understand, and they make them impossible to understand. They use such deliberately difficult language. And I think a lot of people before that, people whose children return from college and spout this stuff, a lot of people become intellectually intimidated by it. I think that it's the same thing with all of the implicit bias stuff and all that. Your boss tells you to do something that you feel isn't right. But they've got a whole language to explain it, and you don't really understand it, and you go along with it because you think you must be dumb. And you're not dumb. You're the cleverer person in the room if you've seen through that. But there's not much to help you. Very few people are going to reach out. And there's a terrible opportunity cost if you're accused of all sorts of terrible things or even questioning it.